found the email chain by accident. I wasn't snooping, I was just trying to find the wire transfer confirmation my brother had asked me to forward to his lender. His laptop was open on the kitchen counter, and there it was. 3 years of financial gymnastics, laid out in black and white, and my name was the thread holding all of it together. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, I had withdrawn my co-signer status, and my brother's dream house had officially become someone else's problem. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My brother is 2 years younger than me. Growing up, it was just the two of us and our mom in a 3-bedroom rental in Columbus, Ohio. Mom worked doubles at the hospital most weekends. She was an LPN, always tired, always warm, always making sure we had what we needed, even when she clearly didn't. She passed away 6 years ago from a heart attack she never saw coming. She was 53. I was 26. Before she died, she pulled me aside in the ICU during one of her more lucid moments. She held my hand with both of hers, the IV tube catching on her wrist, and she said, "Watch out for your brother. He's softer than he looks." I took that seriously, maybe too seriously. My brother. I'll call him by what he was to me for most of my life, which is just my brother, the person I thought I knew better than anyone. He struggled after Mom died. He'd been working at a logistics company, managing shipping routes, decent pay but nothing spectacular. I was doing better. I'd spent 4 years building a bookkeeping and tax prep business out of a 2nd bedroom and then a small office, and by the time Mom passed, I had 17 small business clients and a waiting list. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. I had a 401k and an emergency fund and a paid-off car, which in your late 20s feels like winning some kind of invisible game. So when my brother came to me 8 months after Mom's funeral and said he needed help covering his rent because he'd had to take unpaid leave for mental health reasons, I didn't hesitate. I Venmo'd him $1,200 and told him not to stress. That was the first time. Over the next year and a half, the requests became a pattern. Nothing alarming on its own. $200 here for a car repair, $300 there for a medical bill, $500 once because his refrigerator broke. I kept a mental tally, but I never said anything because he was my brother and Mom had asked me to take care of him, and I genuinely believed he was struggling. Then he met her. Her name is Sienna. She came into his life at a birthday party for one of his coworkers, and within 4 months, she had effectively moved into his apartment without ever being asked to contribute to rent. I know this because he mentioned it offhandedly, the way people mention things they're hoping you won't examine too closely. I didn't dislike Sienna immediately. That's the part I keep having to remind myself. My initial read of her was that she was charismatic in a performative way. Lots of big opinions about things she didn't have much experience with. Always the funniest person in the room at the expense of someone else. But I told myself I was being uncharitable. She made my brother laugh. He seemed lighter. After everything he'd been through, I thought maybe that was enough. The financial request slowed down after they got together, which I interpreted as a good sign. He was more stable, I assumed. She was probably contributing to the household. Good. Then, 14 months into their relationship, they got engaged. I found out via a group text that included people I'd never heard of. No phone call. No, hey, I want to tell you something. Just a photo of her hand with a ring on it and a string of emojis. I texted back the appropriate congratulations and sat with a feeling I couldn't quite name for the rest of the afternoon. 2 weeks later, they asked me to lunch. I should have known from the way they'd picked the restaurant. Nicer than where we usually went. The kind of place with a wine list and cloth napkins. That the lunch had an agenda. They ordered appetizers before I'd even looked at the menu, which told me they were nervous. Nervous people overspend at restaurants. The pitch came over the main course. They wanted to buy a house. New construction in a suburb outside Columbus, in one of those master-planned communities where all the homes have the same 2 or 3 facades, and the HOA fees cover a pool nobody really uses. The base model started at $410,000. They'd been in love with a particular lot, a corner unit, and they'd already talked to the builder about upgrades. They couldn't qualify for the mortgage on their own. My brother made decent money. Sienna worked in event coordination. She planned corporate retreats and company holiday parties, and her income was contract-based, which meant variable, which meant the lender was barely counting it. Combined, they were short on the debt-to-income ratio. They needed a co-signer with strong credit and stable income, and no significant debt. They needed me. Just on paper, Sienna said, smiling across the table at me. Once they're established in the house for 2 years, we refinance and take you off. You won't even feel it. I want to be honest about what happened inside me at that lunch. I felt proud. My brother was buying a house. My mom would have been so happy. I pictured Thanksgiving dinners there eventually, a yard, maybe kids someday. I thought about what she'd asked me in the ICU and I thought, yes, this is exactly what she meant. Help him build something. I said yes. What I didn't understand, what no one explained to me, and what I should have researched myself, is that co-signing a mortgage isn't a formality. It means your name is on the loan. Your credit is on the line. If they miss a payment, it shows up on your report. If they default, the lender comes for you. And the refinance in 2 years? That's entirely dependent on them qualifying on their own, which requires them to have managed their finances well enough in the interim to make it happen. There is no legal mechanism that forces it. There is no clock. There is just a promise. I signed the paperwork in February. By April, the upgrade request had started. It began with the kitchen countertops. The base model came with laminate, and Sienna wanted quartz. The difference was $4,200. Could I loan them the money? They'd pay it back once they were settled. I loaned them the money. Then it was a primary bathroom, upgraded tile, a freestanding soaking tub, a rainfall shower head. Another $6,800. Then it was a backyard. They wanted a covered patio with a built-in grill station, stamped concrete, and landscape lighting around the perimeter. The builder didn't include that in the base package, but they had a preferred contractor who could do it as part of the construction phase. $11,500. I drew a line at the backyard, not the harshest line. I didn't say no outright. I said I needed to think about it. Sienna called me the next evening, not my brother. Her. I just want you to understand the vision, she said. This is an investment property as much as it's a home. The upgrades add resale value. You're not spending money, you're putting money into an asset. It's not my asset, I said. She laughed like I'd made a joke. It kind of is though, isn't it? Since your name is on the loan? That was the first time I felt something shift, not alarm exactly. More like the click of something locking into place that you didn't realize had been loose. I didn't loan them the backyard money. I said I was stretched. My brother didn't push back. But Sienna started to change after that. Nothing dramatic at first, just small things. She'd make comments when the three of us were together. Observations about how I dressed, always framed as jokes. You really do the whole too busy to care about clothes thing, huh? Or she'd reference my job in ways that made it sound smaller than it was. Just bookkeeping though, right? Not like an actual CPA? She said it lightly. Always lightly. I let it go because she was going to be my sister-in-law and because I genuinely didn't want conflict. The summer before they were set to close, they invited me to the construction site to walk through the progress. I drove out on a Saturday morning. The framing was done, the drywall was up, and it smelled like sawdust and fresh paint. And the particular optimism of unfinished spaces. My brother was genuinely excited. He walked me through each room, narrating what it would look like finished, and I felt that warmth again, the mom feeling. The watching him build something feeling. Sienna spent most of the walkthrough on her phone. When we got to the backyard, she looked up from the screen and said, "We're still doing the patio. We found someone cheaper than the builder's contractor." "How much cheaper?" I asked. $7,000 instead of $11,000, but we need it done before the sod goes in. "Where are you getting the $7,000? She looked at me like the question was rude. "We figured you'd cover it, since it adds to the property value." My brother was looking at a window frame, deliberately not looking at me. "I'm not going to do that," I said. "I've already put in over $11,000 in loans that I haven't seen repaid. I'm not adding more." And that's when Sienna said, looking directly at me for the first time all morning, "You know what your problem is? You keep framing this as generosity when it's actually just you trying to control his life. You've always done that. You swooped in after your mom died and made yourself the savior, and now you can't stand that he doesn't need you to save him anymore. The air went out of the yard. My brother finally turned around. He was looking at the ground. Is that what you think? I asked him. Not her. Him. He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, I just think sometimes you make things harder than they need to be. I drove home and I cried in my car in the driveway for about 20 minutes, which I'm only telling you because it matters. Because what she said got inside me in a way I didn't expect, and for a few days I genuinely questioned myself. Maybe I was controlling. Maybe I had made his grief about my ability to fix things. Maybe the loans had strings attached that I'd never consciously acknowledged. I talked to my therapist. She was not particularly moved by my self-doubt. She called you a savior for covering her soaking tub, my therapist said. Let's keep some perspective here. Closing was scheduled for mid-September. 3 weeks before, I got a call from the lender doing a final review. Routine stuff. Income verification. Credit check update. Everything was fine on my end. The agent mentioned that they were just confirming all parties were still committed to proceeding. Of course, I said, looking forward to it. That night, I was at their apartment for dinner. A rare thing by then. But my brother had made a point of inviting me and I was trying. Sienna was in the kitchen, and my brother asked if I could look up something on his laptop, which was open on the coffee table. I don't even remember what he asked me to find. Something in his email. I found the email thread. It wasn't hard to find because it was right at the top of his inbox, a chain with the title, House Stuff, Loan Timeline. The most recent message was from Sienna to someone I didn't know, a name I didn't recognize, dated 2 weeks prior. I shouldn't have read it, I know that, but the first 2 lines were visible in the preview pane and they said, once we close and she's locked in, it'll be way harder for her to back out if we need anything else. The cosign means she's in it whether she wants to be or not. I read the whole thread. It went back 4 months. Sienna had been strategic about the timing of every financial ask. She'd laid it out explicitly in an early message, noting that they should wait until I was too deep to walk away before bringing up the bigger items. She'd talked about the refinance timeline. Honestly, we probably won't qualify for at least 5 years, but she doesn't know that. She thinks it's 2. She'd talked about my brother's role in managing me. Just stay quiet when she pushes back. She'll feel guilty and come around. There was a message where she'd written, the mom card always works. Bring up what she promised her, and she folds. My brother had replied with a thumbs up emoji. I closed the laptop. I sat back on the couch and I thought, very clearly, I need to do nothing right now. I need to eat this dinner and drive home and sleep and look at this again in the morning before I do anything. I did exactly that. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney. I explained the situation. She explained my options. I had not yet signed the final closing documents. I had signed the loan application and the initial commitment paperwork. But the actual deed of trust and the final closing package were scheduled to be signed at the title company the week before the closing date. I could legally withdraw my participation before that point. My credit pull would show up on my report regardless, but I would not be legally bound to the mortgage if I hadn't signed the final documents. What happens to their closing if I withdraw? I asked. Without a cosigner who meets the bank's requirements, the loan doesn't fund, she said. They would lose the earnest money deposit they've already put down, and the builder keeps the upgrade costs already incurred. How much is the earnest money? You'd have to ask them. Standard for new construction in that price range is usually 1 to 3%. On a 410 purchase, probably around 8 to 12,000. I thanked her and hung up. I want to be clear about what happened next, because I've had people ask me if I acted out of revenge. Honestly, not entirely. What I felt was something colder and more deliberate than revenge. I felt like I had been handed a document that told me exactly what I was worth to the people I had been protecting, and I had a choice about whether to keep pretending I hadn't read it. I withdrew from the loan. I sent an email to the lender, not the builder, not my brother, the lender. informing them that I was withdrawing my co-signer commitment due to a change in personal circumstances. I CC'd the real estate attorney. I did not call my brother first. I did not give Sienna advance warning. My brother called me 4 times that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. His first voicemail was calm. He said he was sure there was a misunderstanding and asked me to call him back. His second voicemail was less calm. He said I was being reckless and that he needed to talk to me before this went any further. His third voicemail was Sienna's voice, not his, and she called me several things that I won't repeat here because they don't change the story. His fourth voicemail was my brother again. His voice had gone flat. He said, "If you're doing this to punish us, just know that you've crossed a line that I don't think comes back from. Don't call me." I sent him one text. It said, "I read the emails. I know what the plan was. I'm sorry this didn't work out." He never responded. The closing fell through. The builder kept the earnest money, $9,800, and invoiced them for the upgrade costs that had already been completed, which came to just over $14,000 because the quartz countertops and the primary bathroom tile were already installed. Between the lost deposit and the upgrade invoices, they were out close to $24,000. Sienna called me from a number I didn't recognize about a week later. I answered because I didn't know it was her. She was not calling to apologize. She told me that what I'd done was illegal, which it was not, and that she was going to sue me, which she did not. She told me I had destroyed my brother's future and that my mother would be ashamed of me. She cried, or made sounds like crying. She said she'd given up an apartment she loved for this house, which I'm not sure what she expected that to accomplish. I said, "Sienna, I read the emails. The ones where you planned out the timeline for keeping me in long enough that I couldn't leave. The ones where you talked about using my mother to manipulate me." Silence. "I made a copy before I closed the laptop," I said. That was a bluff. I hadn't. But she didn't know that. She hung up. I haven't spoken to my brother since. It's been 8 months. In the first few weeks, I thought about reaching out more times than I can count. Mostly late at night when the absence of that relationship felt like a physical weight, but then I'd remember the voicemails, and I'd remember that fourth message, his voice gone flat, the door closing, and I'd think he knew. He read those emails with her. He sent the thumbs up. Grief is a strange thing. I've been grieving my brother since before any of this happened, I think. Maybe since the first time Sienna made a comment about my clothes and he laughed instead of saying something. Maybe since the kitchen countertops. Maybe since Mom died and we handled it so differently that we became slightly different people who just happened to share a last name and a childhood. My therapist says that grief and clarity can coexist, and I think that's right. I can be sad about losing my brother and clear-eyed about the fact that the brother I thought I was protecting had chosen, repeatedly and deliberately, not to protect me. What I have instead is a smaller circle and a quieter life, and a coworker named Bex, who has been my best friend for 6 years and who showed up at my apartment 2 days after the closing fell through, with Thai food and a very expensive bottle of wine. We sat on my kitchen floor because the couch felt too formal for the conversation we were having, and she let me cry, and then she helped me laugh, and then she told me the story of her own terrible ex-brother-in-law, and made him sound like a cartoon, and it helped. My friend Jasper, who I've known since college, texted me a few days later. "You did the hard thing. The hard thing is usually the right thing. I'm proud of you." I didn't feel proud yet, but I kept the text. My bookkeeping business is doing well. I brought on 2 new clients in the last quarter, and I've been working with a consultant on expanding into payroll services, which is a natural extension and something I probably should have done 2 years ago. I have a savings account that is no longer being quietly drained by incremental requests I felt too guilty to refuse. I think about my mom sometimes, and I wonder what she would say. Not the mom from the ICU, who was scared and who loved her son and who asked me to look after him out of that fear and that love. I mean my mom in full, the one who worked doubles and still found time to be sharp and funny, who had a low tolerance for people who took without giving, who once told me, when I was about 14 and had loaned my lunch money to a classmate who never paid me back, "Baby, You can be generous or you can be a pushover. You get to decide which one you're being. I've been thinking about that distinction a lot. There is nothing generous about agreeing to be managed. There is nothing honoring a mother's memory in letting her love be used as a tool to keep you compliant. She asked me to watch out for my brother. She did not ask me to hollow myself out in service of someone who decided I was a resource. I watched out for myself. I think, in the end, that's the same thing. Bex and Jasper came over last Sunday, and we made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and a salad and too much garlic bread. And we ate at my kitchen table and talked for 3 hours about nothing important. At some point, the conversation drifted and got quiet, and I looked at the two of them across the table and I thought, this is what it is supposed to feel like. This ease, this absence of bracing for the next ask. My mother wanted me to build something. I think I finally understand what she meant. I keep coming back to that thumbs up emoji, not the email thread, not the things Sienna wrote about timing and manipulation and using my mother's dying words as leverage. I've made a kind of peace with those. What I can't stop thinking about is my brother reading all of it and hitting that button. One tap. That's how little it cost him. There's something clarifying about discovering you were managed, not lied to in the heat of the moment, not betrayed by accident, but managed, scheduled, accounted for. Sienna had mapped out my psychology like a project plan. Wait until she's in too deep, invoke the mother, let the guilt do the work. And it had worked, for years. Because I had let my love for my brother override the part of my brain that was quietly keeping score. I don't think love is supposed to make you stupid. I think it can if you're not careful. But I don't think that's its nature. What made me vulnerable wasn't love. It was the story I'd built around love. The story where honoring my mom meant absorbing whatever came next, where saying no was the same as abandoning him. I confused loyalty with compliance, and Sienna had been counting on exactly that confusion. The honest thing is that I saw the signs, not the emails, those I genuinely didn't see coming, but the comments about my clothes, the way she'd framed my job as small, the moment in the backyard when she looked at me and essentially told me my generosity was a character flaw. I saw those things and I explained them away because I wanted the version of the story where everything worked out, where my brother built something good and my mother's wish was fulfilled, and I got to be the steady presence in the background who made it possible. That version of the story required me to not think too hard, and I was tired enough and hopeful enough that I was willing to cooperate. What I know now, what I earned the right to know, is that being a decent person doesn't protect you from being taken advantage of. Decency is not a shield. But clear thinking is. Not cynicism, not the kind of permanent suspicion that poisons everything, but the willingness to look at what's actually in front of you and name it honestly, even when naming it costs you something. I paid almost $12,000 in loans before I read those emails. I gave years of logistical support, emotional labor, credit access. I don't regret any of it cleanly. There's always some grief mixed in, because the person I was helping was real to me, even if his loyalty wasn't. But I understand now that generosity without discernment isn't virtue. It's just availability. And the people who want to use you are very good at finding available people. The strength it took to withdraw from that loan, to sit with 4 increasingly hostile voicemails and not flinch, surprised me. I had spent so long managing other people's reactions that I'd forgotten I was allowed to act without their approval, that I could close a laptop and call a lawyer and send an email and let the consequences land without orchestrating the aftermath. My mother wanted me to watch out for my brother. I think what she actually meant was, watch out for the people you love. And sometimes, watching out means refusing to be the thing they fall back on when they stop deserving it. The pasta Bex and Jasper helped me make last Sunday tasted better than anything I ate at the restaurant they took me to when they were trying to ask me for a cosign. I've thought about why that is. I think it's because nothing was owed at that table. Nothing was being negotiated. It was just people who chose each other, freely, on an ordinary Sunday, with too much garlic and nowhere to be. That's what I'm building now, slowly and with better judgment than I had before.